Whole Foods was started in 1980 with a single store in Austin, Texas. Today there are more than 270 locations across North America and the UK with over 53,000 employees. Our guest today will be talking about conscious capitalism, and then we'll have a chance to ask him some questions of our own. So please welcome the co-founder, chairman, and CEO of Whole Foods, John Mackey.
See how I'm going to negotiate this. Although I've done this presentation a bunch of times, I haven't yet memorized it, so I'm going to have to be looking at it too. Do I know the clicker? I think this is a little red thing. Yeah. That goes forward, back, stop. Okay. I guess I didn't really know how it worked, but I thought I'd be smart enough to figure it out. We'll see. Oh, I can see in the light. Anyone to dim the overhead light so people can read this better? Well, you'll just have to listen to me then. I think we're going to look back, historians are going to look back on the 20th century when we get enough time, and I believe they'll see it that was a great war was fought between capitalism and socialism in the 20th century. And I think capitalism won that war decidedly by any type of objective measurement. When they compared East Germany to West Germany, or the Soviet Union to the United States, or North Korea to South Korea, sort of no contest. The capitalism won. But unfortunately, it didn't capture the minds of the intellectuals or the hearts of the people. Or as I forget who said this originally, or it escapes my mind, but capitalism's the worst of all systems except for all the other ones. And I find it fascinating that corporations today are probably the most influential institutions in the world, but they're not liked, they're not trusted. People are afraid that corporations are taking over the world. I think the whole anti-globalization movement is largely an anti-corporation movement. At Whole Foods, I'm constantly being accused of being evil simply because we are a corporation. And what else do you need to know? Corporations are fundamentally about making money and profits, so they're not good. This whole recession we're in, the worst recession since the Great Depression, is almost universally being blamed on greedy business people, particularly greedy Wall Street financial types, and bad monetary policy, bad regulations, bad government policies, bad taxation. None of that's being held accountable. And so we're seeing, it's fascinating that right now, you might say capitalism and corporations have a major branding problem. They got serious marketing problems. They have not marketed themselves well in the world. And so I blame the defenders of capitalism for the bad brand that corporations and capitalism have got. Because, I mean, people like Ayn Rand and Milton Friedman, and these are both a couple of people I really admire, they spent so much intellectual energy trying to defend things that I don't think should be defended, such as selfishness and greed. And they are so intoxicated by Adam Smith's invisible hand, which of course is a great, brilliant insight, that they never put capitalism and corporations' best foot forward. That in fact, corporations and capitalism are doing great good in the world. And yet that's not seen, and that's not marketed, and that's not branded. So conscious capitalism is an attempt to rethink what corporations and capitalism is and to present a new brand of them in the world. So it's pretty simple what conscious capitalism is. It's really based on three fundamental principles. Principle number one is that business has the potential to have a deeper purpose than only maximizing profits. Secondly, that it's best to manage the enterprise to attempt to optimize value for all of the major interdependent stakeholders, which we can define as customers, employees, suppliers, investors, and community and environment. And then the leadership of the organization should take the approach that their job is to serve the enterprise, to serve the purpose of the business, the deeper mission and purpose, as opposed to getting as much as they can get out of the enterprise while they can. So that's kind of it, but that has, those three principles have amazing implications we're going to work through a little bit. Which raises a very interesting question, is what is the purpose of business? And it's curious because if you ask the average person on the street, they'll tell you the purpose of business is to maximize profits. I mean, it's sort of like, that's kind of the default answer. But it's rather a curious answer, because if you ask what the purpose of a doctor is, you won't very often get the answer, well, the purpose of a doctor is to maximize profits. Obviously not. The purpose of a doctor would be to heal the sick people. And if we ask what the purpose of a teacher is, we'll come up with some answer to educate people. Or if we ask the purpose of an architect, to design buildings. If we ask what the purpose of a lawyer is, we get on a little bit more shaky ground. But theoretically, the purpose of a lawyer would be to promote justice and to defend rights and to make sure that they need conscious lawyers as well. But nevertheless, all of these professions do point to a deeper meaning and a deeper purpose beyond simple self-interest, beyond they point towards some type of public good. So I think it's fair to ask that question about business and who defines the purpose of business. And surely it's the entrepreneurs who create the business in the first place who have the right to define the initial purpose of the business. You know, I have known hundreds of entrepreneurs in my life, and including I've met most of the movers and shaker entrepreneurs of this age. And with only one or two exceptions, none of them have ever told me that they started their business primarily to maximize profits. Even somebody like Bill Gates, who's the wealthiest man in the world, if you talk to Bill, he'll tell you that he didn't start Microsoft primarily to see how much money he could make. Now, he wanted to make money, of course. All entrepreneurs want to make money. But mostly, Gates was turned on by the idea of having great software and having a PC on every desktop. And it was the whole software revolution that caught his imagination and filled his heart with passion. And today, in the 21st century, I think increasingly entrepreneurs are going to have to be entrepreneurs of meaning. In the conscious business, the entrepreneur is going to interpret what the business means to its employees, to its customers, to its investors, and to the media, and to the world at large. Now, most entrepreneurs do not necessarily, like I say, I didn't go up on a mountaintop and God did not hand me the purpose of Whole Foods Market. In fact, we're still discovering what our purpose is. Our purpose is still evolving. And I think a living, dynamic business has its purpose evolve over time to higher and higher levels of complexity, purpose, and meaning. If you think about the companies that you most admire, almost all of them are hearing the beat of a different drummer. They are manifesting a deeper purpose. And you know, I didn't come up with the good, the true, and the beautiful. That obviously Plato first came, he probably didn't come up with it either. He probably got it from some guy he met on the street corner, but he's the one that gets credit for it. And these do sort of articulate the highest ideals that at least Western civilization has aspired to, the good, the true, and the beautiful. I threw the heroic in there because I think that is something that does animate quite a few entrepreneurs. And so an example of companies that might be pursuing the good or service to others. A great example, my favorite example, is Southwest Airlines, which I think is a great company. And do you know what their New York Stock Exchange symbol is? Love, L-U-V. And they are always named one of the 100 best companies to work for. They are, if you talk to people that work for that company, they clearly have a passion in their work. They turn their planes quicker. And that Herb Kelleher was definitely a visionary that I think went to a deeper drummer. Other examples of that would be like the Container Store, or God forbid, one of my competitors, Wegmans, I think has a strong service ethic. Nordstrom's, I think that's intrinsic in their DNA. We talk about the discovery and the pursuit of truth. Just think how cool it is to discover something that no one else has ever known before, to invent a product that changes the world and takes human knowledge one step further. I think companies that are doing that today, a great example is Google, certainly Wikipedia, maybe Genentech. These are companies that pursue the truth with great passion. We talk about excellence in the quest for perfection or the creation of the beautiful. My favorite example is Apple, because all Apple technology is so intrinsically beautiful. From the Macintosh to the iPod to the iPhone, this is technology that is aesthetically very, very pleasing. My other favorite example is Warren Buffett in Berkshire Hathaway, because I think his passion about investing, I mean, you'd say, God, well, there's a guy that's totally dedicated to just making money. And certainly Buffett is dedicated to making money. But if you get to know his work a little bit better, you'll see that he always saw investing as almost the thing of beauty, that there was a perfection to his method of investing, to seek out intrinsic value, discover it, have discipline around it. And he's educated a whole generation or 2 generations of investors, and has changed the world as a result. My third deeper purpose would be changing and improving the world, the heroic impulse. And I do think Bill Gates does represent that, first with Microsoft. Secondly, now with the second act for him is the Gates Foundation is clearly, as he seeks to do things like vaccinations and improve education, is clearly having some world-changing effects. My other favorite example is Muhammad Yunus and the Grameen Bank, with their deeper purpose of eliminating poverty on the planet Earth. So you might think about your own favorite businesses and ask, is there a deeper purpose to that business? Is there a great purpose that animates people? In fact, it's an interesting question to ask about your own organization. Does Motley Fool have a deeper purpose? And if so, what is it? By the way, as long as you're part of the organization, you're helping to create and evolve the purpose. And that's something that customers, employees, suppliers, investors, as well as the entrepreneurs co-evolve as time passes. I call this the paradox of profits. It's my position that profits are best achieved by not aiming directly for them, that they are sort of a byproduct of other things. And I use an analogy to explain that. I'm now old enough and to know a little bit about what it takes to be happy in life. And one thing I know is that if you make happiness your primary goal in life, you are probably not going to achieve it. Because the people that put their own happiness first tend to be very self-involved people, rather narcissistic when you get right down to it. And it turns out to be a very bad strategy. And instead, the people that are happiest, in my experience, are people that are pursuing some deeper meaning and purpose in their life, are growing as individuals, growing in emotional intelligence, social awareness, spiritual intelligence. There are people that put love, friendship, relationships first. And there are people that generally aren't that focused around their own happiness. Instead, their happiness comes as a byproduct of the other things that give their life purpose and meaning. And that if you pursue those things and you flourish in them, then you will have the increasing feeling as you go along in life that, you know what? God, I've had such a good time. Life has been so wonderful. I'm so deeply happy. I think it's a little bit like that with profits, that a business fulfills its purpose and its mission and why it exists. It creates value for customers. It creates a great place to work where people can flourish. It's a good citizens in its communities. And if it creates value and has competitive advantage and differentiation, it will also create profits as well. Businesses, though, that put the profits first, well, hey, the morality tale of Wall Street is there's the purest example of simply putting short-term profits first. And that philosophy is part of the reason why Wall Street has come under such hard times, in my opinion. So one way to think about business, we think about the models that people have for trying to understand corporations and business. The models are sort of out of date. The metaphors we use, they go back to the Industrial Revolution to a certain extent. We see business as a machine. The first metaphors that came out were like, okay, you take land, labor, and capital, put them on an assembly line, do it right, mix them up right, and profits spit out on the other side. And so in its day, that was obviously a very revolutionary metaphor. But in the 21st century, I would argue that that metaphor is not the best metaphor to use. I also don't think war metaphors are particularly helpful or useful, nor do I think Darwinian survival of the fittest metaphors are necessarily the best. I would argue that today in the 21st century, the best way to think about organizations tends to be that they're more of a system, that they are a complex system that the leadership has to be able to manage in a way to optimize the entire system. The reason why is because the stakeholders are all interdependent upon one another. Or as I like to say, a simple way to think about it in the retail business is that management's job is to make sure the team members are well selected, well trained, and are happy and flourish in their work. And then the happy team members result in happy customers, and happy customers result in happy shareholders. And you have this virtuous circle, this spiral upwards. It's always been ironic to me is how few businesses understand that. It always amazes me in a retail business, or like the airline industry is a great example of how many, you get such bad service on so many of the airlines. And it's like they don't even get or understand the customers are happy. Happy employees result in happy customers, which results in a successful airline. Very few, maybe Southwest, JetBlue, and one or two others really get that. So we optimize the entire system will also result in creating the highest long-term profits as well. It's a virtuous circle, and it does pay off for the shareholders. I also say the price system is one of the disciplines that we use in order to negotiate between the various interdependent stakeholders. So this is Whole Foods Market's business model, and it's an example of an interdependent sort of self-organizing system. At the center of our business, we have our core values and we have our mission. And like spokes on a wheel, radiating out from that core purpose and business mission are our interdependent stakeholders, our team members, our customers, our suppliers, our investors, and our community and environment. And if I could figure out how to do it, I'd have these actually in a more web-like relationship. This is still a little bit too mechanical, but it does show the flow of interdependency between the stakeholders. And this is an important slide because oftentimes when I talk to people about this, some people are just, their minds just don't think well in terms of systems. I don't know whether it requires your intelligence to get to a certain level to be able to see a system, but some people literally can't see them. So it's kind of frustrating sometimes because it's like trying to describe love to somebody who's never been in love. You just really kind of fail to do it very successfully. But in a conscious business, leadership starts to think about the business in a different way. It thinks in terms of the system. And it focuses, a lot of times people want to talk about the conflicts that exist between stakeholders, the conflicts of interest. Like there's some kind of Hobbesian war going on with everybody trying to, screw everybody else. And in my experience, that it's much more about the synergies that exist between the stakeholders. that should be what's focused on and what you should try to direct your energy to, rather than focusing on the trade-offs. Because you begin to see scenarios where you create value simultaneously for all of these stakeholders. Strategies that create something that wins for your team members, wins for your customers, wins for your suppliers, and wins for your investors, all at the same time. Until you hold the space in your mind that such a thing is possible, you literally won't ever think of it that way. But once you begin to think in terms of the system, you begin to see ways to organize your business so that you can create value simultaneously for all of these stakeholders that are interdependent on one another. You begin to ask different questions. When you ask different kinds of questions, you begin to get answers you never expected to get. But if you never ask the question, the answer cannot manifest itself. See, I believe that the human mind is infinitely creative, that there's no limit to human creativity, and that all the problems that we are currently dealing with, I actually believe entrepreneurs and conscious capitalists can figure out the solutions to them. I have very little confidence our government can figure anything out in terms of solutions, but I have great confidence that entrepreneurs can. And I don't mean just business entrepreneurs. I also have great confidence in social entrepreneurs, education entrepreneurs, political entrepreneurs, spiritual entrepreneurs. What we need to do is unleash the entrepreneurial spirit in everybody, and that collectively we can solve our problems. I'll give that example on Whole Planet Foundation in a little bit. So anyway, talking a little bit about Whole Foods, these are our 7 core values. Now, just how purpose evolves, we came up with the first 5 core values 24 years ago. And 2 years ago, I was meeting with the supplier group, and they wanted to know, how come you guys don't make the suppliers a core value? And I said, well, we do. Suppliers they're very important in Whole Foods. They're in our mission statement. And they said, but you don't have us as a separate core value. I looked up the core values and said, and they're right. So that led to a lot of internal discussion, and I realized that Whole Foods Market, probably because we didn't make it a core value, probably didn't treat our suppliers as well as we treated the rest of our stakeholders. So we've now created the 6th core value of creating win-win partnerships with our suppliers. And most recently, we've just added, you won't even see this up in our Old Town store here, but we've added a 7th core value, which is we are actively promoting the health, well-being, and longevity of our customers and team members through education about healthy eating. We've changed that to stakeholders, so I haven't even updated the slide yet. Oh, here's a story for you. I put down Whole Foods' deepest purpose is changing and improving the world. That is the heroic, deeper purpose. Now, what's curious about this is that I always, as the founding entrepreneur, I always felt like Whole Foods' deeper purpose was service. We're in the service business, we're in the retail business. Our job is to serve customers. And but when I've done this talk to our team members and I poll them, I ask them which of these deeper purposes, the good, the true, the beautiful, or the heroic, most describes Whole Foods Market. What's curious is I get votes for all of them, but the service one comes in kind of a distant second. The one that our team members are pretty clear about is Whole Foods Market's deeper purpose is heroic, changing and improving the world. And I tell you that story because it's an example of how a purpose evolves in an organization. And it goes beyond even necessarily what the founding entrepreneur believes. So the stakeholders can take your purpose in ways that you yourself hadn't anticipated when you launched your company. Okay, some of this I'm going to go through pretty fast, but one of our core values, selling the highest quality natural and organic foods available. We're very proud of the fact that we've actually helped the health and well-being now of millions of people. We've offered alternatives to the industrialization, and some of that industrialization of our food has resulted in degradation, and we're in the process of creating higher animal welfare standards. We teach at Whole Foods that our most important stakeholders are customers. I always say that if you want to go out and do your own business, if you just learn this one thing, you will probably be successful in business, because most businesses never learn it. They never truly learn that their customer is their most important stakeholder. And I know it because as a grocer, we don't have anything patented, and a Wegmans can come into town from nowhere, or a Trader Joe's can come into town, and your customers are only as loyal to you as it's in their interest to be loyal. And I could say you never own your customers, you can only rent them, because they shop voluntarily. So we've organized our entire business model around empowering our team members to be able to satisfy our customers. Some of the things we do at our company that are unique for team member happiness and excellence. We have self-managing teams. They truly are self-managing. They do their own hiring. They do their own product selection. They are empowered. You have to be voted on a team in Whole Foods. It requires a 2/3 vote by the team to get in. All our salary information is open, so we know what everybody else gets paid. We set a salary cap. It's currently at 19 times. We let our team members vote on their benefits every 3 years. We'd have gain sharing incentives for everybody. We give stock options to all team members. 93% go to non-executives. We have fully paid health insurance. We pay the 100 premiums for all of our. We have a great health insurance plan. It is actually, Whole Foods has a solution to our healthcare crisis in America, if anybody would listen to us. That we pay 100% of the premiums. There's a high deductible catastrophic plan. We give money in personal wellness accounts they can spend on their own deductible, or for non-covered things like acupuncture and chiropractic, any money they don't spend rolls over. So it piles up over time. And we do lots of other cool stuff. And we have been named one of the 100 best companies to work for 12 consecutive years, ever since I started the list. One of the things that's wrong in America is that I've actually been doing a little more research on this lately. In 1965, the multiple between the highest paid in Fortune 500 companies, the multiple between the highest paid and the average pay was 24 to 1 in 1965. By 1980, that had gone to 40 to 1. By the year 2000, it had gone to 300 to 1. And it's bounced around that 300 to 1 level. And in our company, we started out at 8 times and went to 11, then 14, and now it's at 19 times the average pay. Stock options, most companies in America, the top 5 executives receive 75% of the stock options, and every rest of the company gets the other, and most of the rest of the 25% goes to the next tier of leadership. In our company, we distribute our options throughout the entire company. That sounds great, except as we know, those options are all worthless at Whole Foods at this time. But that hasn't always been the case. And they take a long time to vest, so we have hopes that they'll still be in the black. Sometimes by the time I get to this part of my talk, people will think this guy's like some kind of socialist himself. He's like anti-profit. He's talking against profit. He doesn't even understand what business is. But actually, I'm very much into profit. And Whole Foods has been, over an extended period of time, the fastest growing and the most profitable food retailer in the United States. And let's see, profits are created through voluntary exchange. Karl Marx is wrong. They're not based on exploitation. And profits fuel all technological progress in the world today. It's one of my favorite slides, if you have any historical context. The world is moving out of poverty. And all you got to do is know that less than 200 years ago in 1820, just 1820, not really that long ago, 85% of the people alive on the planet Earth lived on less than $1 a day. And that's in today's dollars, not in dollars at that time. So 85%. If you would have been alive in 1820, you probably would have been living on less than $1 a day, because 85% of the people were. You can see that our progress in the world, we got that down to about 50% in 1950, about 60 years ago. It's continued to go down till today. It's actually about 20%, although I haven't had that updated since the world economy crashed. If the governments of the world don't screw it up, though, and you look at the trend lines, we will probably end poverty. Some people in this room are pretty young. You'll probably see the end of poverty in your lifetimes. We will probably wipe it out. I mean, obviously there'll be pockets and there'll still be poor people, but I mean in terms of any kind of mass phenomenon. Poverty, all you have to do is project out the trend lines, and it's going to be eliminated. It'll be maybe the great accomplishment of the 21st century. That is due to business, by the way, corporations, business, and they don't get any credit for it. So when I talk about rebranding capitalism, this is one of the ways we need to rebrand it. That it is business that's going to end poverty in the world. And before corporations, before business, everybody was poor, or almost everybody was poor, and everybody thought that was just the natural lot of humanity. So some of the stuff, Whole Foods, $8 billion in sales, number 324 in the Fortune 500. Until the slowdown, even with the slowdown, we still averaged about 9% same-store sales growth since over the last 10 years and since our IPO. Our ROIC for stores over 1 year is 35%. EBITDA, compound annual growth rate of 30% since our 1992 IPO. And even with the downturn in our stock price, we're still up about 1,000% since our IPO. That used to be like 3,000%, but that was really cool. We talk about win-win partnership with our suppliers. A business like Whole Foods cannot prosper unless our suppliers also prosper. And I've watched the whole industry grow up around Whole Foods. That we were the outlet, and they flourished. Most of them have sold out now, honestly, to PepsiCo or Coca-Cola or Kraft or other big food conglomerates. But still, we wouldn't be successful without them, and they wouldn't have been successful without us. So that's truly a win-win-win relationship. Some of the stuff Whole Foods is doing, we're really big in local. We are promoting local. One of the things we're doing, we're making local loans to our small. We've loaned out to, I guess that's a little out of date, over $2.5 million now to small producers around the United States and Canada and the UK. We have a whole trade guarantee internationally so that we are working with Fair Trade, Rainforest Alliance, and most recently Market Ecology that do our certification on environmental sustainability and ethical labor practices. And you see that whole trade. We've got over 1,000 products now that are labeled with our whole trade guarantee. Our company is deeply committed to communities and environment. I do not think it's theft from the shareholders. I do think it's good business, that it does create value. It creates higher morale for your team members. It creates customers can create enthusiasm. Even some investors can get excited about it. I believe philanthropy should be done intelligently, and just like any other part of your business, it should be done with discipline and wisdom. We give about 90% of our money away locally at our stores. It's 5% of our net profit. So our stores are mostly giving it away in their local communities. So we actually support thousands and thousands and thousands of nonprofit organizations, most of that done locally. On a larger scale, we have our own foundation called the Whole Planet Foundation, which works with, does microcredit loans in the developing world. And our strategy, also an example of evolving purpose. Our company asked, okay, do we have any responsibility to the communities that we're trading with? We asked that question and we said, well, I think we do. Why don't we? And so we started doing microcredit loans in the developing world. Basically, wherever we're trying to trade, we're trying to set up microcredit lending. And gosh, we're up to 15 countries now. We've only been doing this for 4 years, but we've been out. I didn't update the files. It's over 30,000 and over 10 million loaned out. And it's done to basically poor women. 99% of the loans are to women. And it has a 99% repayment, done without any collateral, with no contracts. And it was my privilege to tour our Guatemala project a year or so ago. And it was very moving because every one of the women, what they wanted to talk about was what they were going to do. You get the loan for 1 year. You pay it back a little bit every day or a little bit every week. And then when you pay back the first loan, you get a second loan, which is bigger because your credit goes up as you get. Every one of those women wanted to talk about what they were going to do with their next loan. They were on fire and these are simple things like a little storefront on a road or a new sewing machine or a new cow, or they were going to get somebody else working in, they were going to hire somebody in their textile business. But it's making a huge difference for thousands of people. So we estimate that we've done over 30,000 women now, and on average that touches about 5 people per family. So our projects have we've helped about 150,000 people, and we've only been doing it for 4 years. Here's where we are. And this is a great example of why I say it's win-win. There's nothing our company has ever done in our 30-year history that has fired up our team members more than this. We've created a volunteer program. Whole Foods has its own little Peace Corps where our team members can volunteer, and they go down to these communities on like a 30-day trip, and they get to meet people in these communities. They do some type of usually conservation or educational work while they're down there. And these are young team members, a lot of them who've never left the United States before in their entire lives. And it totally expands their consciousness. And so I ask you, we've invested like $10 million in this project over the last 4 years. And gosh, we've created $50 million of goodwill with our team members alone. And we've now got our suppliers in it. We have what we call a Suppliers Alliance. So where suppliers get sort of preferential marketing in our stores if they join the Suppliers Alliance. So we have, and by category, so there's a tea category. There can be body care category. And so they compete to be one of in the Suppliers Alliance. So it creates a win for our suppliers, our customers. We have our prosperity campaign. Actually, that's why I'm here in DC. It's because our P Street store raised the most money of any store from our customers. And these are like pennies at the register at a time. And but our company altogether raised about $1.5 million in pennies from our customers for the prosperity campaign. The P Street store won. They announced to me last year, the Arlington store won it the year before, and the store team leader said he was going to P Street, and the P Street would win this year. And sure enough, they did. We had a big celebration of that last night. I do think environmental stewardship is very important for corporations in the 21st century. Not only is Whole Foods in our core business mission, support local, sustainable, organic agriculture. We're committed to sustainable seafood. We've worked with the Marine Stewardship Council since the beginning. We've created our own third-party certified farm fish program to make sure environmental stewardship is being carried out there. We're very committed to green building, and we're in the LEEDS program to try to get our stores certified in terms of the silver or gold at LEEDS when we can. Energy replacement through energy win credits. Our stores have green mission teams. Our team members, the young generation's on fire about the environment. You know, far more than my generation is. They're the ones pushing us to evolve quicker. And stores set up green mission teams which meet and figure out how to make the stores that they're working in greener. And they've done some pretty amazing things. So like a lot of the stores now compost all their own produce and then compost it, and then they sell it back to the gardeners in terms of usable compost. Our animal welfare program for our livestock, and I think the best way to think about your environmental strategy is that it's a win-win-win scenario. Again, it's an example of once you start thinking of the business differently in terms of the interdependent stakeholders, you can create win-win scenarios that are good for the environment and good for the business as well. Walmart is doing a fabulous job right now of creating value for its customers, values for its investors, and value for the environment. Gosh, I want to talk a little bit about nonprofit organizations towards the end of my presentation here. One thing about nonprofits, they get deeper purpose. Nonprofits are started with deeper purpose in mind. It's kind of at the very DNA of their existence. Although, puzzlingly enough, the fact that you have a deeper purpose doesn't mean you're able to transcend self-interest. Somehow their human nature is transcended just because you started your nonprofit for idealistic reasons. Oftentimes, nonprofits have problems with what I call entrenched self-perpetuating boards. There's no way to get the board out. You can get a board out, of a corporation because the shareholders can have a revolt and fire the board. But how do you get a board out of a nonprofit organization once they get in there? Very difficult. Sometimes nonprofits have a anti-profit mentality. Money is evil, profits are evil, and that makes them sub-optimize their organization since they have the unhealthy thinking about money. So I'm going to argue that they also need to evolve to more conscious models of business. This is an example of a conscious nonprofit organization. And does this look familiar? It should. It's almost exactly the same as a conscious for-profit business model that I put up before. What's the difference? Instead of a business mission, they have a social mission at the center. They have the same basic stakeholders and they still have customers, they have employees, they have suppliers. The difference is instead of investors, they have donors. That's fundamentally the biggest difference. But they're people that are entrusting their money. The donor doesn't necessarily want a return on their capital. They want a return on their donation, though. They want to feel like their donation's making a difference in the world. And there's actually a lesson for nonprofits. Nonprofits could do a lot more in communicating with their donors/investors in terms of how their money is actually benefiting and furthering the mission. I think most nonprofits do a pretty poor job of that. This sort of sums up what I call the dichotomy that exists in the thinking about corporations and about nonprofits. On the left, we have the altruistic, good nonprofits. And they sometimes believe money grows on trees, that because they have a deeper purpose, that they're sort of angelic in their approach to things, and that they're fundamentally good. On the right side of the wall are corporations, rapacious, greedy, selfish, and exploitative corporations that are responsible for everything that's wrong in the world. They're greedy. All they care about is money. They're raping the environment. They're not angelic. They're devils. And they have smokestacks polluting everything. And does this resonate at all? I mean, do you guys see this dichotomy that exists in our culture? What I want to do is basically tear the wall down. That I think this whole dichotomy we have between selfishness and egoism versus altruism and self-sacrifice is a faulty dichotomy. That if we promote conscious business and conscious capitalism, we can tear this wall down. We can begin to see that business has a deeper purpose. And the thing that unites it, the golden Aristotelian mean here, is love. That love creates the win-win scenario. Whereas egoism is I win, you lose. Altruism is I lose, you win. In love, or creative love, we both win. We both win. I care about me. I care about you. I care about our customers. I care about, and you can have your spiral of caring expand higher and higher and become more and more inclusive as your emotional intelligence expands with it. So I want to make a distinction here between conscious capitalism and social responsibility. CSR is not the same thing as conscious capitalism. In fact, they're very different. The biggest difference is that corporate social responsibility is consistent with the traditional model of business. You basically can just graft it on. It's kind of like you've got a traditional corporate profit orientation at the core, no deeper purpose, and it's like, we're getting a lot of hassle here about we need to be more socially responsible. Call in the public relations department. And how can we spin this in such a way that we can be seen as one of the good guys instead of one of the bad guys? I know. Let's set up a corporate social responsibility department. And in that department, usually reporting up through public relations department, they figure out ways to present the corporation in such a way that it'll be interpreted by people as socially responsible. And the cynics have a good phrase for that. It's called greenwashing. And it's basically the belief that the corporation hasn't really had a change in heart, isn't any different. And in the conscious business, though, the deeper purpose, the social mission, is in the DNA. It's in everything the corporation does, not merely a department that ultimately doesn't have any power. So that requires a genuine transformation of the business model. So where I see traditional capitalism evolving to in conscious business and conscious capitalism, from a focus on profits to a focus on purpose, from only the shareholders win to all the stakeholders win, from a short-term focus to long-term, from zero-sum mentality to a win-win-win scenario, from self-centered to holistic, from focusing on conflicts of interest to harmony of interest, from exploitative worldview to a creating value worldview, from focusing on trade-offs to focusing on synergies, and from corporations being disliked, mistrusted, to corporations and capitalism becoming valued, loved, and trusted. I really believe that if we do not move in this direction, if corporations don't move in this direction, the great upward flow of prosperity is going to come to an end. That we're going to see fascism or socialism become the dominant economic models again. I already feel like that's where the United States is heading. Right now, I look at government taking over banks, automobile industry, more and more regulations. I mean, I myself have been through being articulate and outspoken about such matters. I've been through an FTC investigation for being a monopolist, an SEC investigation for posting on the internet. The IRS is after Whole Foods trying to get us on something. And it's very, you stand up against and speak out, you run some risk today in our society. But just to sum it up and conclude, the three purposes of conscious capitalism, or the three distinguishing elements of it, are: business has the potential to have a deeper purpose. Second, you manage the business. It's a management strategy. You manage the business on behalf of all the interdependent stakeholders, and the leadership of the business serves that deeper purpose and serves the enterprise. If you think about business this way, you create a different kind of business ethics, which moves the organization to a win-win-win-win way of being. I believe that humans are animated and drawn to the highest values we're capable of: the good, the true, the beautiful, and the heroic. I see no justification for why business should not also aspire to those same deepest aspirations. And that ultimately is what conscious business is. It's the business that is aspiring to manifest in the world the highest ideals that humanity is capable of. Thank you.